Hi there. So today we're going to do another short journaling activity. So again, if you don't have your journal, pause this video, run get it, and then come back. So today I want to invite you to do some reflecting on and brainstorming around what are the risk factors and what are the protective factors you have around judgment, right? So we've already talked about our triggers for judgment, some of them. So the risk and protective factors that I'm referring to are more about some of the, like as far as protective factors, some of the more proactive, like maintenance things that you might do to make sure you're in a more resourced nervous system space so that it's easier to be conscious of what's happening with your feelings versus going straight, kind of letting judgment react. I think of judgment oftentimes as the second dart to a situation, right? The first dart, Tara Brach talks a lot about this. The first dart is the feeling, the boom, like I'm triggered, whether it's an internal trigger or something someone else says to us that triggers something. The second dart tends to be our judgment towards them or towards ourselves about the first dart. So what are the protective factors that help us slow down that experience enough so that then we can just be like, oh, first dart, whoa, okay, what do I need? Or that we don't get as dysregulated by the first dart. So some of those factors might be kind of basic self-care type of things, like getting enough sleep, eating well. And the risk factors might be just the flip side of some of those, or they might be different. So for me, for example, it's good for me to know, like the week before my cycle, I'm more primed, I'm lower resourced, I'm more likely to go to judgment than at other times in my cycle. So one, that's just great awareness. Like I can be compassionate with myself. And also, like maybe that's not the week I want to have some of these hard conversations, setting boundaries with family or something like that. So I think it's really great for us to be aware of what are the factors that make it more risky for us to slip into judgment, and what are the factors that kind of protect us from being in that judgmental place. So another one might be social media time, right? So you might be aware of like, okay, if I spend like 30 minutes on social media, that's fine. But it becomes a risk factor when I have like went through over an hour of scrolling. Then it tends to turn for me into comparing and feeling not good enough, and everybody else is doing all this stuff. So that's good information. So I want to invite you to really do some reflecting on, and you might even put on your journal, well, to make a, make a tea, something like this, right? And you could write risk factors on one side and protective factors on another. I mean, you could get creative with this, but just kind of go down and write a list. Like, what are my risk factors? It might be like caffeine. Like, I love it, but it's a risk factor for me. It primes me. Or if it's like if I have that second cup of coffee, I'm more likely to be judgmental when I'm driving because I'm kind of amped up and my nervous system is amped up. Or if I'm in a rush. Like for me, that's a really big risk factor because I'm like rushing around, I'm rushing with my son, I'm rushing with my partner, I'm more likely to feel frazzled and overstimulated and more likely then to be in judgment because I'm more likely to get triggered, right? Then when I'm slowing down and my nervous system can have a chance of settling. So the protective factor for me around that might be like making sure I have plenty of space in my days, especially during transition. So making sure I leave early enough to not be rushed as I go to the bus stop to pick up my son. Something like that. So again, you're really invited to bring some awareness to what your risk and protective factors are for judgment. And they may be just opposites of one another, but there will be some different things under risk factors. And different things under protective factors. We would all benefit so much from hearing so if you just want to write in the comments some of your insights, like here are my top 3 protective factors, or here are some of my risk factors, like these things really prime me to be in judgment. And it might be, even with family, right? If it's like, 2 hours with family is good for me, but if a risk factor for me is if I stay beyond, maybe it's like crossing boundary is a risk factor, or if I spend a whole day with family instead of just 2 hours, it becomes more of a risk factor. So there's a sweet spot. So again, I want to invite you to really get creative and think about like, what are some of the triggers as you kind of think about the past few days as you've been exploring judgment, and what are some protective factors and risk factors that you can glean around some of these triggers. So again, we're really still exploring like a lot of aspects around judgment. So, and again, please share in the comments. We will all benefit so much from hearing from one another. Thank you so much for being on this journey with me, and I will see you tomorrow.